Greetings and salutations to all you holy divers, you masters of puppets out there in the rock and roll world, in podcast land. Welcome to the latest episode of the Fortress of Rock. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Glad to have you aboard as always on Friday evening. Episode 79 of the Fortress here, February the 17th, 2023. And as always, we start off with news of the world, our tribute to Freddie Mercury and Queen. Now, across the globe, across our great country, this past Sunday, everybody transfixed by the sporting spectacle that was the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 57, of course, this past Sunday with the Chiefs beating the Philadelphia Eagles. But what we're concerned about here on the Fortress, rock and roll. Now, there were some ads out there that tried to appeal to the old school rock and rollers like you and me, old school music fans. So we'll talk about those here real quick. But first, despite the fact that, of course, we don't care one way or the other about Rihanna and her baby bump and her sperm dancers. Sorry. I guess that's not cursing, so I can still keep labeling the Fortress as a clean podcast, but did you guys notice who her guitar player was? Granted, the band didn't really get a lot of camera time with all the spectacle, the dancers, with her getting pulled up on a platform to dizzying heights that would have made me upchuck. But of course, we've been waiting for years for a new album from the band Extreme, and yes, their guitarist, guitar wizard Nuno Bettencourt, was playing guitar, probably faking it. If you lip sync, is it guitar syncing? But it was still cool to see him out in the middle of the field in Arizona, pretending to play guitar. We all know he can play guitar. But yes, Nuno Bettencourt was present during the halftime show. So we got a little bit of a nod to classic rock during Rihanna's show. But again, the ads were where we really saw the advertisers, the companies, in some instances, trying to pull back in the old school fans like you and I. For every woke commercial, there were some that kind of gave a subtle nod to classic rock and those of us who still love it. Of course, the most prominent one of all was the ad for Workday, where we got Paul Stanley of Kiss, we got Joan Jett, Ozzy Osbourne, Billy Idol, and the great current rock and roll star guitarist Gary Clark Jr. in an ad poking fun at corporate types, office workers who refer to themselves as rock stars. And I thought that commercial worked really well. Now, the ones that featured classic music, classic rock, or people in classic rock that didn't work so well were the Doritos Triangle commercial where they're trying to basically play the best of both worlds in terms of Jack Harlow, who I have no idea who he is. Talk about generation gap. But then at the end, they try to pull it back towards the older audience by bringing in Elton John. Just a miserable commercial overall. But of course, they tried with Elton John. TurboTax. It's not rock and roll per se, but I'm a child of the 80s, so anything involving the 80s I've got to discuss when it comes to music. TurboTax had an ad featuring the Safety Dance. Men Without Hats, a fun, awesome song that I think most rock and roll fans would admit that they liked. But the ad itself was just dumb beyond belief. Somebody dancing around for about a minute. Some old guy dancing to the Safety Dance. Somehow this is supposed to make you want to file your taxes with TurboTax. And then finally, you guys know how much I love Dave Grohl. Next to Miles Kennedy, probably the hardest working man in rock and roll, who I still have respect for. Dave Grohl in a commercial for Crown Royal, talking about all the great things that Canada has invented or has contributed to pop culture. Of course, because Crown Royal is from Canada. It kind of seems a little bit silly to me because last time I checked, Dave Grohl isn't from Canada. If I'm wrong on this, you can call me out on it. Drop me a line on our podcast page or our Facebook page, but I thought Dave Grohl was from the Northwest. The United States Northwest. This seems just, let's get the coolest guy we can to talk about our booze. But again, it's still good to see at least the companies, the advertisers trying to reach out with the classic rock figures, the classic rock icons, whereas the NFL has completely abandoned us. When do we get Metallica for a halftime show? When do we get the Foo Fighters? You want to check out more commentary about how the NFL screws things up each and every week? Check out the Sports Frenzy 2.0 podcast. That's one of the ones that I do outside of the Fortress of Rock. All right, back into music. Record Store Day, a fine tradition that's been around for quite a while. This year, 4/22/23, April the 22nd of 2023. Head out to your local independent retailer. If you don't know who that is, check out the Record Store Day website, and they will direct you to the closest independent record store in your area. Now, I'm not going to go through the list of all the releases that are going to be available exclusively on Record Store Day, but the one that I will bring up, Van Halen. live right here, right now. Of course, that's from the Sammy Hagar era. Will be released on a 4 LP set, red vinyl. 3 unreleased tracks that were not included on the CD release initially. Limited to 7,500 copies. Here's where it gets fun. $100. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. You guys know how much I love the mighty Van Halen, but I'm not going to give up $100 to basically get 3 songs I don't have live from the Sammy Hagar era. But this is the world we live in now. This is what you've got to deal with this. We've talked about all these massive reissues of classic albums with live shows attached, extensive liner notes and duplicate concert programs and things like that, as they gouge you for far more money than those sets are probably worth to you, because if you're like me, you already have the originals on CD, or if you want to go way, way back, you probably have got the original vinyl. If it's an album from the late 70s or early 80s. Give us something new. If you're going to charge this kind of money for these reissues and the expanded editions, then give us lost tracks that we've never been able to have access to before. 3 unreleased live songs from the Sammy Hagar era of Van Halen. Sorry, it's not worth $100 to me. It's just not. And I'm a Van Halen fanatic. And I feel this way about a lot of other bands and a lot of other box sets. We recently talked about the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Fillmore, Live at the Fillmore set. If you want the full 4 CD version, you got to shell out $50 for a basically, in my opinion, you heard my partial review of it a few weeks ago, a dull, unimpressive 4 CD live set. All right, moving on to tour news, as we do each and every week here in News of the World. Bruce Springsteen has announced more 2023 tour dates with the E Street Band. They've been having issues lately with COVID running rampant throughout the band. I know we thought we were done with this. August through December of 2023, mostly major sports stadiums, including August the 9th at Wrigley Field. I've seen Springsteen once. I wanted to see him again, but after what he did, what he condoned with the dynamic pricing policy through Ticketmaster and Live Nation, sorry, Bruce, one and done. Not going to do it again. Not putting up with it. You are an enemy to rock and roll fans far and wide. You're a hypocrite. You're a tool. You always have been, as we go back. If you've read anything going back to the Born in the USA era, how he was convinced to change his image from the rebellious, tortured youth of his early days into a jingoistic corporate shill. Bruce Springsteen is what is wrong with rock and roll. And if you want to call me a hypocrite, because I do still occasionally buy his albums, not all of them, but on occasion, I'll pick up a Springsteen album. But again, I will not see him live ever again because of his hypocritical, looking down his nose stance at all of us hardworking rock and roll fans who can't afford thousands upon thousands of dollars for a ticket to see him in concert. Another band that tends to be more pretentious than they should be is U2. We saw the brief advertisement during the Super Bowl. Again, going back to that, as they announced their official Las Vegas residency dates. Prices have not been put out there yet. It's going to be late in 2023 at this massive, impressive venue, the MSG Sphere at the Venetian in Vegas. Now, I would assume, based on the information we've got so far, that they are going to be playing the entirety of, in my opinion, their best album, Achtung Baby. Now, they have not come out and officially said that, but it sure seems like from the advertisements and the commercial that that's where they're leaning. Now, they have announced who's going to be playing drums for their Vegas residency and any other tour dates that they might end up playing this year or into the future until or if Larry Mullen can come back and play. Bram Vandenberg will be the drummer for U2. What? You don't know who he is? Neither do I. You can do a search. He's played for some obscure bands that neither you nor I have ever heard of before. But all that matters is he comfortable with them? Are they comfortable with him? Can he fill the shoes of Larry Mullen until and if he comes back? But that won't be until at least 2024 at the earliest. Now, we have been talking about finally government, fans rising up after decades of the greed displayed by Live Nation and Ticketmaster. We've got lawsuits. We have got Congress trying to fight the stupidity, the idiocy of what Live Nation and Ticketmaster have done to us in terms of overcharging for fees, not being able to handle ticket demand, a la Taylor Swift. We talked about Bruce Springsteen and the dynamic ticket debacle for the first part of his 2023 tour. Well, you know I'm a cynical guy. You guys have listened to this podcast long enough. You know I'm not a guy who looks on the bright and sunny side of things. I'm always looking for the dark. I'm always looking for the corruption. I'm always looking for the evil, because if you prepare for the worst and the best happens, you're pleasantly surprised and you feel good. If you prepare for the best and you don't get the best, you're going to be a deeply dark, depressed human being as you wander aimlessly along the sidewalks and the streets of your city, wondering, where did it all go wrong? You prepare for the worst, you expect the worst, and when the best happens, you put a smile on your face and say, cool, a great day in life. And I will come back to this theme in segment 2, in our breakdown segment, as I talk about our concert review this week with Alter Bridge Mammoth WVH and Red. But why would you expect anything from our government, from our judicial system, other than the worst? A system that seems to kowtow to the rich. A system that seems to defend those with money, those with influence, those with power, and ignore the masses who are pointing out the obvious. Live Nation Ticketmaster, $20 fees for a ticket. It's ridiculous. They don't even give you a physical ticket anymore. What are they doing? $20 per ticket to justify a digital ticket. Sometimes it's so bad that the ticket itself, the cost of that ticket matches the fees. You can sometimes go buy a $20 ticket to a club, especially if it's in a city like Chicago or New York. You buy a $20 ticket to a small club, but it goes through Ticketmaster. You're paying $20 fees on top of that. The price is double. I've seen it happen here in Indiana. It's outrageous, it's pathetic, and it should be stopped. But Judge Danny J. Boggs, an appeals court ruling, again, multiple lawsuits out there. So maybe one of these other lawsuits was better worded, more well written. But in the end, Judge Danny J. Boggs earns my ire, earns my anger, earns my spite, as he shot down an appeal of an earlier ruling, trying to take down Live Nation and Ticketmaster, the monopoly that they are. And they are the most blatant monopoly, in my opinion, in America. Especially Live Nation with their vertical monopoly, where they own the venues where they sell tickets to concerts for. Judge Danny J. Boggs says, well, you went online to buy tickets, you clicked on the terms and conditions and you accepted them, so you're SOL. Of course, he's a mature, astute judge, so he didn't say SOL. He pulled out the legal dictionary and used the legal verbalese and all that great stuff to couch it in a long 2 or 3 paragraph ruling, basically saying you clicked on the terms and conditions, you accepted them, you're screwed. But the problem is, unlike somewhere else, if I go to buy something at Target versus Walmart versus at Amazon, I click on the terms and conditions. I'm accepting the fact that I am going with you to buy the specific product, whether it's a pair of slippers, a movie, a piece of furniture, a TV, whatever it might be. I know I have other options. I have other options. I can choose to not accept Target's terms and conditions and go to Walmart or go to Amazon and buy the same or a similar product. We don't have that option with Ticketmaster and Live Nation because it is a monopoly for this idiot Judge Danny J. Boggs, to come out with this pathetic, stupid, silly, short-sighted ruling. Will you accept the terms and conditions so the user is out of luck? You should read everything. That's not the point. Yes, you should read the terms and conditions. The point is, you either buy the tickets or you can't go to the concert when you're dealing with Live Nation and Ticketmaster, and that is an unacceptable choice. It is an illegal choice. And Judge Danny Boggs doesn't get that, and he's a moron. That's the whole point of all these lawsuits, on top of the stupid, over-the-top fees. The fact that Live Nation and Ticketmaster control your right to go see a concert at a fair and reasonable price, that is the issue. And I will say his name one more time because I hate him. Judge Danny J. Boggs doesn't understand the law, obviously, as much as he should. And I'm not trying to act like I'm a lawyer. I only play one on the podcast. But when you've got a clear monopoly, like what Live Nation and Ticketmaster have, clicking on accepting the terms and conditions isn't the issue. That's not the point. The point is, you're not giving me an option. I can't decide against the terms and conditions of Live Nation and Ticketmaster and go somewhere else. That's not an option, and that's called a monopoly. Clear, pure, and simple, Judge Boggs. And you guys wonder why I am cynical and I am dark about so many things in life, especially when it comes to music and the music world. And I know there's a lot of artists out there who would agree with me. We've heard many of them talk about how the record companies would just chew them up and spit them out. Well, now we've got this with Live Nation and Ticketmaster, where they just want to chew up the consumer, the ticket buying consumer, chew them up, spit them out. And I'm going to fight it on this podcast to the best of my ability as one person can. And again, if you're anywhere where you can fight against Judge Danny J. Boggs, do it. Because this guy is obviously an idiot and doesn't understand antitrust, doesn't understand a monopoly. And sadly, I guarantee he's not the only one out there. All right, some positive news. Although I have ripped on Bon Jovi recently. Last year, I told you guys, saw Bon Jovi live for the first time ever, and it was a miserable experience. One of the worst, if not the worst, concerts I've ever seen. Now we're getting additional information and some positive vibrations out of Richie Sambora's camp. Of course, Richie Sambora had his own issues, jettisoned from Bon Jovi roughly a decade ago. And it was obvious watching Bon Jovi, it's not the same without Richie Sambora. Now, first up, Richie Sambora should have a new solo LP coming out sometime in 2023. And I will tell you, his solo stuff is pretty good. It is worth listening to. But he also kind of shed some light, the story at least that I read, shed some light on what problems were plaguing the Bon Jovi 2022 tour. Yes, it turns out, shockingly, note sarcasm, that John Bon Jovi was having severe vocal issues. Part of me gets really upset when I hear that. Now, of course, band or performer will go on tour and they'll come under the weather, they'll get a cold. We won't even talk about the COVID situation, because if you got COVID, they just out and out cancel the show, which is how it should be. Refund the money. But if it's the flu or a cold or a throat virus thing, sometimes they'll fight through it. I've seen Alter Bridge in the past. I have seen Rob Thomas in the past. I have seen Paul Simon fight through illness. All three shows were solid. All three shows were good. But if you know going out, you can't bring it for an entire tour, which is what it sounds like the case was with John Bon Jovi last year. Don't do the money grab. Don't do it, because what you've done is now, in a fan like me, you have instilled great amounts of ill will, to the point where I have told Facebook friends, I know the people I went with have told their Facebook friends, Bon Jovi sucks. Bon Jovi's terrible in concert. Don't go see Bon Jovi. And that carries a lot of weight in social media. Whether you like to hear it or not, it carries a lot of weight. So I think right now the best case scenario for John Bon Jovi, bring Richie Sambora back, because I think that is the only way you are going to bring back fans like me, fans like the people who were disappointed and walked out on your shows in 2022 because you were subpar, borderline pathetic, and you never should have even gone out on tour, let alone taken our hard-earned money. I guess I turned that positive into a negative, didn't I? I'm sorry. I said it was going to be positive because Richie Sambora coming back to Bon Jovi I thought was a good thing, but just brought up all my bad memories of last year's Bon Jovi show in Indianapolis. So let's really end this segment on some positive news. Metallica. These guys always seem to do the right thing. They are not the dark band that put out Kill 'Em All anymore. Hardcore fans still debate whether or not they're still really metal. And I'm fine with it. We're going to talk about the new album here in a couple months, 72 Seasons. But here's what matters. And we've got their charity. We talked about the broadcast on Paramount Plus here recently they had out there. I believe it's All Within My Hands. Metallica understand when you are blessed, when you are lucky enough to have the kind of success that they have had, whether you want to call them sellouts, which I don't think is necessarily fair. But at least they're trying to do something with the money and the popularity, and they're trying to do right by it. Metallica recently announced through their charities, their charitable organizations, they will be donating $250,000 for earthquake aid for those stricken in Turkey and in Syria. And let's not make it political. We all know that area geopolitical hot mess. But the thing that shocks me, the thing that always bothers me in this day and age where it's black and white, right or wrong, we can't debate fairly, we can't argue as adults. It projects all the way out to the entire globe, where if something like this would have happened in the United States, we'd all be freaking out. Tens of thousands of lives lost. Yet it happens in Turkey and in Syria, and you see the loss of life. Last time I checked, I believe the death toll was over 40,000 people. And it seems like it barely gets any kind of attention over here. We're more worried about our senile president and shooting down balloons and defunding the police. 40,000 people died in Turkey and in Syria. And because of the fact that, well, they're not our allies, they're half a world away, we don't care. So that's why I admire and respect a move like this from Metallica to draw attention, to not be political about it like a Roger Waters is, who consistently, week after week, has got to insert himself in geopolitical situations, exacerbating conflict and death. Whereas some people like Metallica, four guys like Metallica and their charitable organizations, they just say, just send money over there, help these people out. Because you know what? It could happen here. It could happen in California. It could happen anywhere in this country. We don't know what's going on underneath the surface of the earth. Volcanoes, earthquakes, floods, weather. So we need to stop acting like 40,000 lives don't matter because of where they happen to live and die. And again, kudos to Metallica for stepping up, even though some might say 250,000 isn't enough. It's more than you and I can do. So again, great job from James Hetfield, Lars Ulrich, and the boys in Metallica. So that'll do it for News of the World. Going to have fun in segment 2. I'm not going to review any new music this week. We have a concert review. The only concert review we're probably going to have in 2023 until June. So you better enjoy it. And I did. But there are stories to tell about this show from this past Wednesday night. Nothing vulgar, nothing tawdry. But those of you who have experienced a concert, the good, the bad, seat selection, interaction with your fellow concert goers, interaction with the staff, you'll get it. You definitely want to stay tuned. Breakdown coming up after a quick promo. Alter Bridge, Mammoth WVH, and Red. I'm the Maestro. I'll be right back. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Fortress of Rock podcast with me, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Of course, that was segment 1, The News of the World, our tribute to Freddie Mercury and Queen, where we look back at the past week in rock and roll and all the news and all the controversies that you deserve to know about. Next up is the heart of the show, the meat and potatoes, breakdown, where we are going to review all the new songs, all the new albums, all the new concert tours, the shows that I've seen personally. Stay tuned for that. Of course, we're now available on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Stitcher, Castbox, Google, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Hang out, kids. We'll be right back. All right, segment 2 here, the Fortress of Rock here, episode 79, taping on February the 17th, 2023. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane, excited, glad to have you aboard, as always, each and every Friday night. And I'm very, very excited because this is my one concert review. Didn't have any in December, didn't have any in January. Going all the way back, we have to go back to the end of November for Steel Panther. That was the last time I got to talk to you kids about a concert, a live show. And I don't have anything lined up until, I believe, right now, June. So this is it. And that's why I'm going to focus the entire breakdown segment here. Of course, our tribute to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers on this show from this past Wednesday night, February the 15th, 2023, at the Old National Center, the Murat, in Indianapolis, Indiana. An interesting venue. I've been there many times. I've been in the main theater and also the Egyptian room. It's a very nice place to see a concert. I know that doesn't sound like a ringing endorsement because there are a couple flaws, which I will get to here. I'm going to go into detail about the entire concert experience because it started off subpar, ended up being phenomenal. It is a great example of a concert experience. Those of you out there, of course, most of you have gone to see concerts. Hopefully, a few of you out there have been able to see a lot of concerts like I have. And no two concerts are alike. That's what makes concert going so great for me personally. That's why it's my vacation time. There are people out there who will spend $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 to go to Italy or France. I would take that money and go see 40 concerts before I would go on an overseas trip. That's how much concert going means to me. So let's get into it. Now, first off, my tepid initial mentions, comments about the Old National Center. It's a really nice venue, and I'll tell you what, Parking is usually not a problem if you get there early enough, and we always do. So parking is reasonable. You can get a parking spot within 100 yards of the venue with no problem, and again, at a reasonable price. So parking is not an issue as long as you get there early. And when I say early, 7 o'clock show here for this triple bill, we got in at about 4:45 because we planned on eating first. There are some decent restaurants and bars around the area within walking distance, so absolutely no problem for reasonable parking close by. Um, the bathroom situation at the Old National Center in the Murat is odd. Now, the facilities themselves, many clean stalls, urinals, whatever, male, female. I guess I can't speak to the female side, sorry, but the only problem you've got with the urinals in the men's side and the stalls is that they need to take an off season during the winter. Now, again, this is an indoor facility, so they're probably open year round, but there is like a bottleneck. There is a one person wide entry and exit combined. Think about that. One person, one man entry. So you get a line backed up of people wanting to go in to the bathroom because you have to let a line of people out. You cannot, I'm serious, you cannot get too wide. You either have to let a bunch of people out or a bunch of people in. You can't do both. It's ridiculous and it's stupid. And it's been like that for years, and I don't understand why they can't fix it. Now, otherwise, again, the facilities are top notch, clean, better than almost any other venue I've been to. But when you've got that kind of a severe bottleneck, when you're dealing with people who have to go to the bathroom after ingesting and imbibing multiple adult beverages, that makes for a very tricky situation. Now, the other complaint I had about the show, the venue, the situation, was the merch tables. The lobby of the Old National Center is big. If you want a beer, if you want something to eat, something to drink, no problem. But they only had one merch table to service the entire show. And in this case, failed miserably in terms of planning, thinking that that would solve all the problems, take care of all the customers, because they lost money on me and my friend. We both went in wanting concert shirts for Alter Bridge. We saw the options the first time we came in. We decided the prices were very reasonable. $30 for shirts. Kudos, by the way, to Alter Bridge for that price point. That is absolutely below what most bands would charge, so I give them a ton of credit for that. But, and I'm sure they still sold out. What are you willing to give up in terms of watching these bands versus time spent in line to buy a t-shirt? You're there for the concert. You're there for the bands. You're there for the music. And when you've got a situation like this where you've got one merch table, slow moving, I mean ungodly slow moving, 4 times. 4 times we tried to get in line. Once at the beginning, it was unbelievably ridiculous. Second time, we left during the opening act, Red, halfway through their set. Still not that great. We waited in line for about 10, 15 minutes. The line didn't move that much. We were worried we were going to miss Wolfgang Van Halen and Mammoth WVH, so we had to bail. Third time, let's just say the lines still weren't that great, but I will tell you why. We went out and left our seats between Mammoth WVH and the headliner Alter Bridge. And then at the end, after Alter Bridge, still the lines were ridiculous. The only other show I can remember where the lines were this bad for merch sales was when I saw Metallica. And again, I think you should try to figure out a situation, plan ahead, so everybody can have a shot at getting a t-shirt. Because again, I really wanted an Alter Bridge shirt. There are shows where I can get by without buying a shirt, but this is one I really wanted, an Alter Bridge shirt. They're currently one of my favorite bands. I've got a tour shirt from the Walk the Sky tour, but I really wanted a Pawns and Kings shirt. And again, very disheartening, very disappointing. So, okay, we've talked about the bathroom situation. We've talked about the merch situation, the parking. Now let's talk about the show itself. Now, we've been to the Old National Center before, but usually, you guys know, I try to buy on the cheap. I am not a rich man. I'm like you, day to day, pay the mortgage, pay the bills, hope the car doesn't break down. So usually we've seen Chicago there. We have seen Mark Knopfler there. Usually we're up in the balcony, the upper balcony, and it's not a bad view. It's not a bad sightline. But Alter Bridge, again, just like with the t-shirts, seems like they're very fan cognizant and they try to keep the prices down. So we initially thought we got some seats on the lower level towards the back. We figured these would be better for the price, the same price point we would normally pay for being up in the back rows of the balcony for any other show. Well, again, this is a theater. I don't know in other cities and other venues across the country. I don't know what I could compare it to here locally. I would compare it to the Morris Civic Auditorium. If you guys have one of those older venues that's more like a theater for plays or musicals, that's about the best comparison I can make. And in this case, we got screwed because of the overhang of the balcony impedes the sight line for about the last 15 to 20 rows in the Old National Center. Because you've got a massive overhang from the balcony, so you've got a very small window, very small sight line where you can see what's going on the stage. And you honestly can't see anything above the drummer. So, of course, the first band was Red. I didn't know anything about Red. They, I guess, are a hard rock Christian band that seems to be, for some reason, the kind of band that Alter Bridge likes to tour with, because the first time I saw them, they opened for Skillet. We sat through 3 songs of Red. Not my thing, not my cup of tea. If they are a Jesus band, I mean, they scream and yell like Five Finger Death Punch or Disturbed. And I know I'm pigeonholing them because of that, but still, it's not my type of music. So that was our second trip to the merch table, when we actually waited in line for about 15 minutes and still couldn't get remotely close to the t-shirts. So got back to our seats. Again, not the best sight line. I felt awful because I made the call on the tickets. I was the one that bought them. And then we had some people in front of us that weren't helping out much because they were moving around a lot during the Mammoth WVH set. Now, you guys know, number one, I love Mammoth WVH. I love Wolfgang. Anything Van Halen, I'm in on. This is my third time seeing them in the last year and a half. And I was kind of disappointed. Again, the sightline wasn't great. Where we were sitting, the sound wasn't all that great. You got to wonder because, again, the balcony hanging down in front of the top of your sight line, you wonder if that didn't affect the overall sound. 45-minute set from Mammoth WVH. Everything that Wolfie played was off the debut album, which disappointed me because I've already heard that set 2 times over. I thought by now we'd be getting some new stuff. We've talked about that here on the Fortress. He supposedly was finishing up the second album at the end of January, so I thought we'd get some new stuff. Instead, everything came off the debut album, not even a cover song like when I reviewed last year's show with Dirty Honey at Pierre's in Fort Wayne. We got a cover of Them Bones. Basically got the, I don't want to say generic set, but Mammoth, Mr. Ed, Epiphany, Stone, Think It Over, Distance, You're to Blame, and Don't Back Down. I'm still going to take it. Still, overall, a great set for 45 minutes from Wolfgang Van Halen and the guys in Mammoth. But by now, again, 3 times, roughly in a year and a half, wanted a little bit different, a little bit more. Last year's show at Pierre's, obviously much better, much closer, but a longer set with a few more curveballs thrown in. So didn't even get any of the 3 bonus tracks off of the deluxe edition of Mammoth WVH. So that disappointed me. Again, though, I'll take it. Mammoth is still one of the best bands out there right now in terms of rock and roll, younger guys doing rock and roll. Seats still weren't the best. Again, you got to deal with people. It's a concert, so you got to deal with people. I know my buddy was really upset because he had a guy in front of him who was just fidgeting and moving around, couldn't figure out where he wanted to stand. And this was an older guy. We're not talking about a young kid. This was a guy older than us, probably in his 60s, talking to his wife, yapping to his wife, and ducking and dodging. So we thought, oh boy, this is going to end up ruining the night. Even though the tickets weren't all that expensive, it's still going to end up being a bad night. Doesn't matter how good the bands are. And you guys know, again, if you've been to a concert, if you've been to a lot of concerts, this is what happens. It's not just the performance of the bands, it's not just the sound, it's the people around you, the venue. It all ties in to whether you have a great experience or not. So now the rock and roll gods decide to part the clouds and shine down upon us. Earlier in the night, this wonderful, nice as can be young woman had come up to us. I believe this was when we were waiting in line for shirts midway through the set for Red. And again, we listened to 3 of their songs. I believe they ended up playing 6. They played for half an hour. Again, not my type of music. So again, we were in line for t-shirts, and she came up and she asked, do you want to upgrade your seats? And of course, again, we do the bargain basement stuff most of the time. We try to find the best possible seats we can for the least amount of economic outlay. Let's put it that way. And she was a really nice, she's probably barely 21 years old, really, really nice, really sweet girl. And of course, we said, no, thank you. Like, we're fine where we are. Because at that point, they were selling the upgrades, which they should be. And this was, again, before Mammoth WVH came out. So after Mammoth, we're sitting there. My buddy and I are like grumbling and, oh boy. All right, we're looking forward to Alter Bridge, but not, because just one of those deals where the seats we thought were good weren't that good. And then this girl appears again. And she's saying the same things to everybody in our area. So the Murat, the Old National Center, must know these seats really suck, because they had a lot of seats up in the balcony area that people didn't buy, because, again, Alter Bridge did the right thing. Their representation, the venue, the prices for the seemingly better floor seats were very reasonable as opposed to what they would normally be. So she's asking everybody around us, including us, would you like to upgrade? And again, we're thinking, I'm not going to spend $20-$30 at this point per ticket to upgrade. She says, no, they're free. For Alter Bridge, for the final act, these are free upgrades. We're trying to get everybody to fill the balcony up top, as opposed to these seats far in the back on the ground floor. And so my buddy and I are like, sure, can't be any worse. And if they stink, we'll just come back down here. But everybody around us is taking these. And so I think she really did right by us, maybe because we were so polite to her when she asked us the first time. She was digging in the tickets. She didn't just take the first 2. She dug into her stack of tickets and gave us these 2 and said, here you guys go, head upstairs, enjoy. And we look at the tickets, and they are called royalty seats. We head up to the balcony to the royalty seats, and these seats were phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, we're not talking front row on the floor, but still the sight lines were great. Sound was so much better. So again, the rock gods shined upon us. Be polite. I will tell you this, kids, always be polite. I think, again, because we were nice to this young lady the first time around and she recognized us, She picked out better seats for us. She could have stuck us on the aisle on the far end where we would have been blocked by one of the speakers. Wouldn't have been quite as good. She set us up right as far center stage as she could in the balcony, in the quote unquote royalty seats. So kudos to her. And again, thanks to the rock and roll gods, because that made this experience that much better. And of course, then we get into Alter Bridge. 16 songs. I'll run through the list real quick. The set list from the greatest wiki in the world, setlist.fm. Silver Tongue, Addicted to Pain, Before Tomorrow Comes, Holiday, Broken Wings, The Other Side, Burn It Down, Cry of Achilles, Watch Over You, In Loving Memory, Blackbird, Pawns and Kings, Isolation, Metalingus, and then the encore, of course, arguably the two biggest hits from Alter Bridge, Rise Today and Open Your Eyes. Now, in the 5 minutes I've got left, I will go into detail on what I thought were the best moments of the show. Now, let me say this. My buddy who I was with has gotten, I don't mean this as an insult, but he has gotten into the Alter Bridge game late. So he was really into the stuff from Pawns and Kings, which of course, 3 songs, Silver Tongue, the title track, and Holiday. But I know the entire catalog, so I knew every song that they played. So for me, it was a bit more enjoyable in that respect. I think he was a little freaked out when the crowd, especially down on the floor, were singing along with Miles Kennedy, or at times he would let the crowd sing, and the crowd was singing fairly impressively. There have been shows where I've been to where the lead singer has tried to do that and picked the wrong songs, and you heard the crowd. It's not, it's not like Freebird where everybody knows the words. Now, that's the thing with Alter Bridge. These fans are hardcore. They know the words. I knew the words to most of the songs. Not all, but most. I don't have a single problem with the set list. I think this show was absolutely fantastic. Again, I mentioned I saw Alter Bridge open for Skillet. This is the first time I've seen Alter Bridge as a headliner, and they were phenomenal. I mean, this is arguably one of the 10 greatest shows I've ever seen in terms of a single band's performance. Now, you can rightfully argue that I'm saying this because I'm skewed in my perception, because I got the free upgrade. I got the better seats. If I'd been sitting back in the more miserable seats, you're right. It probably would not have been as good of an experience. I'll tell you this. I just mentioned Freebird. And I've always said Freebird, along with REO Speedwagon's Ride in the Storm Out, probably my top 2 in terms of best songs live that I have seen multiple times. Blackbird by Alter Bridge, probably number 3. Blackbird is an intense, amazing song. And even if you listen to it off the album of the same name from Alter Bridge, even vinyl, CD, the intensity comes through. It is an unbelievable song, arguably one of their best, and definitely live in concert, a song that should not and cannot be missed. So as always, great to hear Blackbird. They always play Metalingus. Mentioned, of course, the 3 new songs off of Pawns and Kings. Brief acoustic set for 2 songs with the gorgeous Watch Over You with Miles Kennedy solo. Beautiful, beautiful song. And then, of course, they follow that up with Mark Tremonti coming back on stage, acoustic in Loving Memory off the debut album, One Day Remains. Interesting. They always seem to do this. They did this with a song the first time I saw them, Burn It Down. Usually a song that Miles Kennedy sings. They let Mark Tremonti take over lead vocals on it. Great, great song. Maybe lost just a touch in vocals with Tremonti versus Miles Kennedy, but still, I'll take it. So overall, Alter Bridge, phenomenal, phenomenal show. Highly recommend you see them if and when you can. Next up, Doc Brown and I are heading into the Rock and Roll DeLorean. It's time for I Want to Go Back after a quick promo. Talk to you in a few. All right, now that we've looked at the current state of music in our breakdown segment, it is time to climb into the DeLorean and travel back in time to look back at moments in rock and roll history, birthdays, deaths, anniversaries of song and album releases. It is time for I Want to Go Back, our tribute to Eddie Money. Stay tuned. And as always, we're on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Stitcher, Castbox, Google, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public, anywhere where you listen to your favorite podcasts. All right, Doc Brown and I have got the Rock and Roll DeLorean fired up. We're in the time stream. Here, episode 79 of the Fortress of Rock on February the 17th, 2023. Of course, we usually, at this point in time, every week, take care of some business. Part 1 involves where you can find the Fortress of Rock. You've obviously tracked us down somewhere, but you always have options. The Fortress of Rock is available on Spotify, Anchor, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and Audible. And as always, check out the Facebook page. We always drop every Friday night with new episodes, but we also on Fridays do the Weekend Rock Project on our Facebook page. Kind of like a poll, fun question. This week, of course, we're going simple. It's the 17th. We just a few days ago had Valentine's Day on February the 14th, so we simply ask for your favorite songs with the word love in the title. But let's try not to get all sappy and sentimental. Pick some fun stuff. I, of course, had to take, first and foremost, Love Stinks by the Jay Giles Band. And then, of course, Sundays on our Facebook page, New Music Sunday. Grab a new video off of YouTube, post a link for you. If you don't have the time, you're working hard, kids, family, I am here for you. The Fortress is here for you. Get some new music to listen to. Easiest way is through our Facebook page every Sunday. That brings us to our sources for segment 1, News of the World, and segment 3 here, I Want to Go Back. As Doc Brown looks at me anxiously, asking when we're going to stop in the time stream. Hold up for a sec, Doc. Put some more hairspray in that white spiky hair. 3 main sources for all of our ideas for News of the World and I Want to Go Back come from ultimateclassicrock.com, thisdayinmusic.com, and of course the Van Halen News Desk. The core ideas I may get from those websites, but the opinions, the elaborations, the embellishments, the opinions, of course, are mine and mine alone. All right, going to be a short trip back in time here this week, and I want to go back our tribute to the great Eddie Money. Few anniversaries and few birthdays to go through. Number 1, in terms of anniversaries, going back to February the 17th of 1989, an anniversary that Steel Panther would be proud of, as they sang about it in their recent release from their upcoming album, the song 1987, the event that technically happened in 1989 on this day. Whitesnake lead singer David Coverdale marries Tawny Kitaen. Of course, as with most storybook, fairy tale, rock and roll romances, it burned out quickly. They got divorced 2 years later, 1991. But as you and I remember those classic Whitesnake videos, and Tawny Kitaen writhing around on the hood of a sports car, one of the brief but memorable rock and roll marriages of all time started today in 1989 with David Coverdale and Tawny Kitaen. And who could ever forget Tawny Kitaen in one of my favorite comedies of all time, Bachelor Party? Had to get that in there. Going back February the 17th of 1975, AC/DC releases their debut LP, High Voltage. And thus, the legend was born. February the 17th, 1960, to wrap up anniversaries, Elvis Presley got his first gold record. Now, we talked recently about the quote-unquote fake gold record that Glenn Miller and his orchestra got. But this was a real gold record from the RIAA, who stole it, of course, from Glenn Miller. But interestingly enough, it was not Elvis Presley's first album that he got his first gold record from. It was his second studio album, simply titled Elvis. All right, moving on to birthdays. Again, like I warned, this is going to be a short trip back in time. I think Doc Brown has got a hot date. February the 17th, 1972, of course, the tragic tale of Taylor Hawkins, drummer for the Foo Fighters, who we all know died less than a year ago. Taylor Hawkins was born on February the 17th of 1972. But again, can't celebrate this birthday, at least not with our full energy and vigor and celebration, considering how we lost him so recently. Now, on the same day in 1972, February the 17th, 51 years old today. I will say happy birthday, even though I have had a lot of issues and problems with this gentleman over the years. Saw him in concert once, paid almost more than I have paid for any other concert ticket in my life to see Green Day and listen to Billy Joe Armstrong rant and rave about politics like a little impetuous, spoiled brat 12-year-old who couldn't get his way and didn't get the president he wanted. So he had to ruin the show by consistently cursing and swearing about the man who was in office, because again, he didn't get what he wanted. Billy Joe Armstrong is part of the problem with the current generation. Even though Billy Joe Armstrong is 51 years old, you could call him a poster child for the current snowflake generation. Pierce every part of your body, color your hair, and complain when you don't get what you want. And complain in the most vulgar, nasty, profanity-laced terms you can find. And he is why I have lost a lot of respect for his band and him personally. Yeah, punk rock, man. Fight the establishment. Easy to do when you've got tens of millions of dollars in the bank. So I will wish Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day a happy birthday here on February the 17th. But at the same time, I will say, grow up, grow a pair, and realize that you are not the center of the universe. You arrogant little fake punk prick. Oops. God, I've got to watch the language here. I keep forgetting. Still, I don't think I broke any rules in terms of profanity, so I can still label the fortress as clean. Bad Maestro. Bad Maestro. And then finally, going back to February the 17th of 1950. Personally, for me, one of my favorites in terms of overlooked, underrated rock and roll stars of the past 50 years. Ricky Medlock. Phenomenal guitar player. Of course. Blackfoot, Leonard Skinner. Still out there with Skinner. The farewell tour, just like Kiss, that will never end. Hopefully we'll get to see them here in the fall with ZZ Top. Love the two major hit songs from Blackfoot. When I say major hits, they barely made the top 40, but for me, and for those of you out there who love your Southern rock, they were big, big hits, of course. Train, and Highway Song. Could listen to those two songs back to back all day, every day. If you have never listened to Blackfoot, check them out. Ricky Medlocke, again, vastly underrated in terms of his influence in rock and roll history. Happy 73rd birthday to Ricky Medlocke. All right, Doc Brown, he's pulled out a bouquet of flowers, a box of chocolates. He's got us back in the Fortress of Rock garage. He's heading out on a hot date here on Friday night, leaving me to watch SmackDown on my own. So we're not quite done yet, though. You guys know when we shut down the DeLorean, we're almost done. Finito with the Fortress, but we still have one final segment. So after a quick promo, we will discuss the music coming up in the coming weeks on the Fortress and wrap it up. We'll be right back. Well, we hope you enjoyed our trip back in time, looking back at the anniversaries, the classic moments in rock and roll history. But of course, the DeLorean works both ways. So now we have to move forward. The last segment here, as always, on the Fortress of Rock with me, the Maestro Kevin Crane. Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Stitcher, Castbox, Google, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. It's all about the future. What's coming out here in the next month or two? What songs? What albums? What concert tours? That's why we call it Wrap It Up. Thanks to the fabulous Thunderbirds. Thanks to you for hanging out. Here comes our final segment. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this week's Fortress of Rock, February the 17th, 2023. I have to admit, we're not getting a lot of great new music to put on the slate to review outside of the stuff we've already talked about in the previous last few episodes. We know we're going to have Steel Panther on the prowl to review in the next couple weeks, as well as Godsmack's Lighting Up the Sky. But we're still a couple weeks down the road from getting to those album reviews. Now, Steel Panther does have a third single out from On the Prowl, Friends with Benefits. I'm trying to decide if it's worth reviewing next week, when the week after we'll probably end up reviewing the entire album. So I'm going back and forth on that. And of course, the song could be a new low point in terms of a moral compass for Steel Panther. So I'm going to have to be very, very careful with my review of that song or the entire album On the Prowl. Three songs I mentioned last week will probably be the ones that I review next week in Breakdown. Second single from the Hold Steady from their upcoming album, The Price of Progress, is Sixers. Second single from Peter Gabriel's upcoming I/O album is The Court. And the first single from LA Guns' upcoming album, Black Diamonds, the song is You Betray. So, pretty confident those are going to be your songs on Breakdown for next week that I am going to review. I have got a couple other interesting tracks from bands I have never heard of before that I have just discovered recently that I may be reviewing here, if not next week, the week or two after that. The reason why? Both songs have prominent, and I've listed them both, so these are not instances of false music advertising. Both songs have prominent vocal turns by two awesome singers who I love. So even though I don't know the bands and otherwise wouldn't care one whit about them, one way or the other, these two songs, number one, the songs themselves sound very, very good. But number two, you've got the added appeal of these two awesome hard rock singers that I love. If I decide to proceed with these as featured songs in Breakdown, obviously you'll know next week, or if I decide to put them off for a week or two after that, I will at least next week let you know the bands and the guest singers. So there you go, a little bit of mystery, a little bit of intrigue to keep you going until the February 24th episode of the Fortress of Rock. Hope you enjoyed it. I did, especially segment 2, talking about the great, fantastic Alter Bridge. Again, sadly, probably the last concert review I'll have for you for the next 3 or 4 months. That could change. I hope it changes, but otherwise, happy to have great weather for the drive down to Indy. Didn't know when we bought the tickets, what we were going to expect. Obviously, Northern Indiana is a crapshoot anytime from mid-November through mid-March. And we ended up getting the arguably best weather day of the winter. So the Conquistador and I, my friend who I always go to these concerts with, very, very grateful and thankful. Our favorite hangout, of course, in Indy, the World of Beer was shut down. That was not fun, but otherwise, fantastic. Fantastic experience. The better parts, the worst parts, that's what makes it life. That's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it rock and roll. So until next Friday night, enjoy your weekend. No football. Watch a movie. Watch the Daytona 500. Watch the Elimination Chamber. Most importantly, listen to some rock and roll and love the one you're with. I'm the Maestro. I will talk to you in 7 days. See ya.